Hello Python programming students, this is Mr. Mace again with the third edition in our series of the Mission Python Code of Space Adventure game, our final project for this year that we're working on. This video will encompass Chapter 1, the second part of Chapter 1, so Chapter 1 Part 2. So let's go ahead and get started. So let me get down to the table of contents and be able to jump to that part. So we're going to talk about adding the planet and the spaceship to our project. So notice that we're going to bring Mars and the spaceship into view. In idle, we're going to add the last two lines in listing 1.2 to our existing listing 1.1 program. And the program may ask us to, the book may ask us to save what we're working on, but I think we're just going to leave it 1.2. Let's see what they're wanting us to do. Yeah, 1-2. So we'll save this new version after we add these lines at the bottom here. So let me pull up my idle script that we're working on. And so here is our script. Down here is the code that we want to add. So notice everything we've added up to this part, but in the draw function we're going to add 2 more lines. So just to make it a little simpler, I'm just going to copy and paste this line. And remember, we want those lines in our function to be indented. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste those twice and then change the image and the location. So we want Mars first, and then we want the ship second. And the top left corner of our Mars image is going to start at 50. So it's going to be 50 pixels to the right, 50 pixels down on the screen. Remember, the y-axis moves down when it gets bigger. And then their ship image will start at 130, 150. So we're going to save this as, and again, we're still saving it inside our Mission Python folder. Instead of listing 1-1, this is going to be listing 1-2. And then on the next page in our book, it says, hey, if you want to go ahead and run it, so you want to run that command right there, pgz run listing 1-2.py in your script command window, or in my case, I'm running it in my Windows PowerShell. So pgz run and then listing 1-2.py. So if I did everything correctly, I should have a picture with our starry background, and then Mars, and then our ship. And there it is. So our starry background, Mars, and then our ship. All right, so let's look and see what our next piece is that we need to work with. So the next piece, down here at the bottom, we're going to change the perspective. Maybe we want the rocket to fly behind the planet. So what you need to think about in this situation is layering your images. Whatever the program draws first, that's the image that's going to be placed on the screen first. And then any images that come after that, that will be placed on the screen second. So if we want to make it look like our rocket is flying behind the planet, we need to make sure we draw the spaceship first and then draw the rocket. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to switch the order of the planet and the ship. So let's go ahead and do that. And this will be listing 1-3. So I'm just going to take my ship. I'm going to cut it and put it here in my before my planet. I'm going to save this as, and this time instead of listing 1-2, it's going to be listing 1-3. And then we will go back to our, my case, the Windows PowerShell, in your case, the command prompt, pgz run listing 1-3.py, and now the ship appears to be flying behind the Mars planet. So down at the bottom you have a training mission number 2. Try to figure that out on your own and see if just by moving one line of code, if you can take and make the planet and the ship disappear. Make the planet and the ship disappear. In other words, all you see is a starry background without deleting or commenting out those 2 lines of code. Just move 1 line of code in your program and see if you can make that work. Make the ship and the planet disappear. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an astronaut to our image, and this time we're going to make the astronaut move. So let's look at this game loop for a second. So the game loop is going to be very important as we create our game. The game loop is basically going to be everything that's going to happen in the game. Of course, we're going to make it much simpler later in the book by adding more functions and so forth. But right now, we're going to have a game loop function where we basically take our player and make him move depending on which arrow key on the keyboard is pressed. So if it's the right key, he's going to move to the right 5 pixels. If it's the left key, he's going to move to the left 5 pixels. If it's the up arrow, he's going to move up. And notice it's minus equals. Remember, up has to decrease, so he's going to move up 5 pixels. And if it's a down arrow, he's going to move down 5 pixels. And so we're going to go ahead and add this to our code. So let me get my script editor back here. And notice this is going to be excuse me, listing 1-4. So we have our drawing function. And then underneath our drawing function, we're going to create another function that's going to be our game loop. So game_loop : and this idea of a global variable. So anytime you have a global variable defined, remember in the classroom we saw variables that were not available outside the function. So by making player X, which we defined up here, and player Y, which we defined up here, available inside the function globally, we can change those and it will change the original. It won't be a local type variable. So we're just indicating to Python, indicating to Python that player X and player Y are going to be global variables. So now we're going to have if keyboard.right. So in other words, if we push the right arrow on the keyboard, player X is going to increase by 5. If we push the left arrow, and notice that we're doing horizontal first and vertical second, it doesn't really matter. Python will be able to distinguish between the keyboards. So we're going to go to the left 5 if we push the left arrow. I'm going to go ahead and move my script editor up a little bit. Actually, I'll make it a little smaller so that we can scroll if we need to. Alright, so now elif keyboard dot up, and this is where we're going to decrease the Y value. Remember, when we move up, we decrease the Y value. When we move down, we increase the Y value. So now we're going to have player underscore Y minus equals 5. And then elif. Now notice, why do you think, and I'm not going to give you the answer, they give you the answer in the reading, so go back and read it. Why do you think they're not using else here? Think about a keyboard for a second and try to think about why they would not be using else in this case. Alright, so we'll save this as, and we're going to save this as listing 1-4. Alright, and notice we have one more line of code that we need to add, clock.scheduled underscore interval, game loop, and then every 3 seconds. Or it may be a little faster. Okay, So that is not part of the loop, so unindent that. So clock.schedule underscore interval. And then it's saying basically run the game loop function every 3 seconds. Now that might be a little faster. It might be every 3/100ths of a second, but we'll see exactly what it is. Down here again, down here in the screen, it will tell you, and so we'll see what we got here. So let's save that. And let's go back to our command line interface and run that version. PGZ run listing 1-4.py. And so now, when I hit the right arrow key, nothing's happening. Left arrow key, nothing's happening. And the reason is we left out our astronaut. So remember, right up here, we've got our astronaut. So we've got to add our astronaut there. All right. So let's go add our astronaut, and notice the order. The astronaut is after the ship, so it looks like it's behind the ship. So images.astronaut. Make sure I spelled that right, astronaut. And then our X and Y values are player X and player Y. So instead of starting at 0, 0, it's player X and player Y. And let me get this 150 out. Save this. Okay. And let's run it again. I think I closed my PowerShell, so let me get my PowerShell back up. And I've got to go to my directory, and then 1-4, and there's my astronaut. And now when I hit my arrow keys, so there's an up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, right arrow, my astronaut is moving. And if I go over to the ship, he is in front of the ship because we put him, I'm sorry, I think I misspoke earlier. We put him after the ship, but before the planet, so he can actually go behind the planet. And so that is where we are so far. All right, and so the spacewalk listing, again, you have another little training mission here. Try to figure that out on your own. And this, it talks about what's happening in the spacewalk listing on pages 27 and 28. So kind of read that and make sure you understand what's going on. And then this is an interesting tip here. And so, and then you have a final training mission, and then our checklist for chapter 1. So go through the checklist and make sure you understand those pieces that you learned about in chapter 1. So that concludes chapter 1. Next video, we'll talk about chapter 2 and do even more with our coding a space adventure game. Thank you.